Hello everyone. Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing popularity, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us continue bringing you amazing content. Your support means the world to us. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thank you so much. Now, let's get into the story about I saw my wife with someone else at a party. I left silently, and she was in tears by dawn. Life had been moving forward in a predictable rhythm. I had been married to Laura for 6 years, and while things weren't always perfect, I thought we were doing well. My job kept me busy, often demanding long hours, but I made sure to carve out time for us. Laura, on the other hand, had a vibrant social life, always out with friends, always talking about work events, always busy. Sometimes it got under my skin, but I convinced myself that it was just who she was. We still had our routines, our Saturday night dinners, our quiet mornings with coffee. I believed that was enough. But then, last weekend changed everything. Laura had been talking about a party her company was throwing, a celebration for someone's promotion. She mentioned it casually, almost dismissively, as if it were just another event on her packed social calendar. "You should come too," she said. But the way she said it felt more like an obligation than an invitation. I hesitated. I wasn't much for office parties, and honestly, I was exhausted from work. But something in her tone made me uneasy. Lately, she had been distant. She spent more time on her phone, smiling at messages she wouldn't explain. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd brush it off, just Emma, or work stuff. It wasn't like I didn't trust her, but something felt off. So I decided to go. Maybe I wanted to prove myself wrong. Maybe I just wanted to be close to her, to see her in her world. When we arrived, she slipped into the crowd almost instantly, moving from one conversation to the next with effortless charm. That was Laura, always the social one, always laughing, always at ease. I stood by the bar, nursing a beer, trying to shake the gnawing feeling in my gut. But then, I noticed something. She wasn't just mingling. Her eyes kept scanning the room, looking for someone. I told myself I was being paranoid. I tried to distract myself with small talk, but the feeling wouldn't go away. So I followed her. The party spilled out into a softly lit backyard, fairy lights strung along the fence, casting a warm glow over the space. I stepped outside, letting the cool air hit me, and then I heard it, her laugh. It was a sound I knew well, but this time it wasn't meant for me. There she was, standing in the far corner with a man I didn't recognize. They were too close, his arm draped around her waist, her hand resting lightly on his chest. Their heads leaned in together, the kind of closeness that should have been ours. And then they kissed. Everything inside me froze. My brain screamed at me to look away, to walk away, but I couldn't move. It was like watching my entire world collapse in slow motion. The beer bottle in my hand slipped and hit the ground with a dull thud. Laura's eyes snapped open. The moment she saw me, her expression twisted into shock, then panic. The man beside her looked between us, confused, but I didn't wait for an explanation. I turned and walked away, my body moving on autopilot, my heart pounding in my ears. She didn't come home that night. The next morning, when she finally walked through the door, she was a mess. Makeup smeared, eyes red, face pale. "Daniel, please let me explain," she said, her voice shaking. But I didn't want to hear it. Couldn't. I just stared at her, waiting for something, anything, that could make this make sense. But when she opened her mouth, all I heard were excuses. A name slipped from her lips. Mark. Someone from work. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't just one moment of weakness. This was a choice. A series of choices. I turned away, my mind racing, my heart breaking. "I need time to think," I said, my voice flat. "Don't follow me." She slumped against the doorframe, tears slipping down her face as I grabbed my keys and walked out. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay. I drove without a destination, the streets blurring past as my mind replayed the scene over and over again. Laura's hands on him, his arm around her, their lips meeting like it was the most natural thing in the world. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, but no amount of pressure could stop the shaking in my hands. I felt sick, betrayed, humiliated. How long had this been going on? Had I been blind this whole time? I ended up at my best friend Adam's place. He took one look at me and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked as I stepped inside, the weight of the night pressing down on me. I sat down on his couch, ran a hand through my hair, and forced myself to say it out loud. "I saw her with someone else." The words felt foreign, like they belonged to someone else's life, not mine. Adam swore under his breath. "Man, I don't even know what to say. Are you okay?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Do I look okay?" We sat in silence for a while. He didn't push, didn't try to fill the space with meaningless reassurances. He just let me exist in my anger, my pain. "What are you gonna do?" he finally asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "She didn't come home last night. She showed up this morning, tried to explain, but couldn't listen. I just left." Saying it out loud made it real. This wasn't just a nightmare I'd wake up from. This was my life now. I stayed at Adam's place for most of the day, avoiding my phone, avoiding reality. But by evening, I knew I couldn't hide forever. I had to face whatever came next. Driving home, I braced myself for the confrontation, for more excuses, more pleading. But when I stepped inside, the house was silent. Laura was sitting on the couch, staring at the floor. She looked up when I walked in, her face tired, tear-streaked. "Daniel," she said softly. I didn't respond. I just walked past her, straight to our bedroom. I should have known I wouldn't be able to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together. I saw the way she looked at him, a look that used to be mine. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling until exhaustion finally pulled me under. The next morning, I woke up feeling just as hollow as the night before. Laura was still there, waiting for me in the kitchen, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. "We need to talk," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I took a deep breath and sat across from her. "Then talk." She hesitated, like she was searching for the right words. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she started. "Mark and we got close at work. I didn't plan for any of this, I swear." I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. "How long?" I asked. She flinched. "A few months. A few months. Not a drunken mistake, not a one-time lapse in judgment. This was planned, deliberate." "Were you ever going to tell me?" I asked. She opened her mouth, then closed it, guilt written all over her face. That was all the answer I needed. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "I can't do this right now." Laura reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Daniel, please. I love you." I let out a hollow laugh. "You don't do this to someone you love." I walked away before I could say something I'd regret. But deep down I already knew. There was no coming back from this. I left the house again, needing to escape the suffocating weight of her words, of her presence. Love? She had the nerve to say she loved me after betraying me for months. The sheer audacity of it made my blood boil. I got in my car and drove, aimless, lost in a storm of emotions I couldn't control. Anger, pain, disbelief. It all swirled inside me, making it impossible to think straight. At some point, I found myself parked outside a diner, the kind of place that felt stuck in time, old neon sign flickering, the smell of coffee and grease lingering in the air. I walked in, sat in a corner booth, and stared blankly at the menu. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't even sure why I was there. But anything was better than going home. The waitress came over, her voice gentle, like she could sense something was wrong. "Rough day?" she asked, pouring me a cup of coffee before I even ordered. I let out a humorless laugh. "You have no idea." She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. People came to places like this to escape, to think, to be alone without actually being alone. I sat there for what felt like hours, nursing the coffee until it went cold, watching the world move around me while mine had come to a screeching halt. I thought about the past 6 years with Laura, all the memories we had built, all the moments that felt so real. Had it all been a lie? Had she been pretending? Or had I just not been enough? That thought cut the deepest. I didn't want to go back, but I couldn't sit in that booth forever. Eventually, I forced myself to return home. As I stepped inside, I found Laura sitting in the living room, clutching her phone, eyes red and swollen. She looked up, hopeful, as if I'd come back ready to forgive her. "Daniel," she breathed out. I ignored the way her voice cracked. "I need answers," I said, my voice colder than I intended. She swallowed hard. "I told you everything." "No," I snapped. "You told me the bare minimum. I need the truth. The full truth." She hesitated. I could see the gears turning in her head, deciding how much to admit, how much to hold back. That hesitation was another betrayal in itself. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. Earlier, I had debated whether or not to look. I had resisted, but the need to know had won. I had logged into our shared cloud, where I knew she sometimes backed up her messages. And that's when I found them. I tossed the phone onto the table between us, the screen still open to one of the messages. "I can't stop thinking about last night. You're amazing. I'll find a way to see you soon." My voice was eerily calm, but inside, I was breaking all over again. "That's from 3 weeks ago, Laura. You didn't just get close to him. You planned this, lied to me, over and over." She paled, her hands trembling as she reached for the phone, but I snatched it away before she could touch it. "No more lies," I said through gritted teeth. "Tell me how long. Tell me everything." Tears slipped down her face. "Daniel, please." "How long?" She sucked in a shaky breath. 6 months. 6 months. That meant while we were celebrating our anniversary, while we were making plans for the future, she was already with him, sleeping with him, lying to my face every single day. I turned away, unable to look at her. "I need air." I stepped outside, the cold air hitting me like a punch to the gut. Couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Everything was unraveling, and I had no idea how to stop it. But one thing was becoming clearer by the second. This wasn't something we could fix. I stood outside in the cold, my breath coming in uneven gasps, my hands clenched into fists, my nails digging into my palms as I tried to ground myself. 6 months. An entire half-year of my wife sneaking around, lying to my face, coming home to me after being with him. My mind raced through the details. Every night she claimed to be working late. Every unexplained weekend outing. Every time she turned her phone away when I walked into the room. The signs had been there, but I had ignored them. Or maybe I had just wanted so badly to believe in us that I convinced myself they weren't real. I heard the door creak open behind me, but I didn't turn. Laura stepped outside, her voice tentative. "Daniel." I didn't want to hear whatever excuse she was about to make. "Don't." She hesitated, probably expecting me to let her explain, to let her spin another lie, but I had nothing left to give. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered. I turned to face her then, anger rising like bile in my throat. "You never meant to hurt me?" I let out a bitter laugh. "You had 6 months to stop. 6 months to come clean. You had 1,000 chances to choose me, and you never did." Tears welled in her eyes. "It wasn't like that." "Then tell me what it was like." I shot back. "Tell me how you justified coming home to me after being with him. Tell me how you looked me in the eye and said you loved me while sneaking around behind my back." She opened her mouth, then closed it, like she didn't even know what to say, because there was nothing to say. Silence stretched between us. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't have an excuse." It was the first honest thing she had said all night. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. "I can't do this anymore." Her face crumpled. "Daniel, please. I love you. I don't want to lose you." I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. "You lost me the second you decided he was worth more than our marriage." Her shoulders shook as she cried, but I didn't move to comfort her. Couldn't. "I'm filing for divorce," I said, the words final, like a door slamming shut. She took a step toward me, desperation in her eyes. No. Please, we can fix this. We can go to counseling, we can. I held up a hand. Stop. Her sobs grew louder, but I felt nothing. The love I had for her, the future I thought we had, it was gone. I had spent the last 12 hours clinging to the idea that maybe there was a way forward, that maybe this didn't have to be the end. But there was no coming back from this. I turned to go inside, but then a thought struck me. Did you love him? She froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. That silence was my answer. I walked inside, leaving her standing there in the cold. I shut the door behind me, sealing myself off from the sound of her crying outside. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel anything. Just exhaustion, a hollow emptiness stretching inside me. I had spent the last 6 years building a life with her, believing we were in this together. And in the end, I had been the only one holding on. I walked through the house, my house now, and everything felt different. The walls, the furniture, the pictures, it all felt like remnants of a life that no longer existed. I stopped in front of the wedding photo on the mantel. Laura's smile was frozen in time, her eyes filled with love, or at least the illusion of it. I reached out, hesitated, then turned the frame face down. I needed space, clarity. So I did the only thing that made sense. I started packing a bag. I didn't have a plan, just an overwhelming need to get out of that house, away from her, away from the memories that were now tainted beyond repair. I grabbed clothes, my laptop, my essentials. As I zipped up the bag, I heard the front door open. Laura stepped inside, her eyes red, her face blotchy from crying. Daniel, please don't do this. I hoisted the bag over my shoulder. I already did. She rushed toward me, her hands shaking. We can talk. Just don't leave. Please. I exhaled sharply, my patience hanging by a thread. What is there left to say? She swallowed hard. I made a mistake. I let out a bitter laugh. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is saying something hurtful in an argument. This was a choice. Over and over again. For 6 months. She winced, like hearing the truth out loud hurt more than what she had done. I wasn't thinking, she whispered. You were thinking every time you texted him. Every time you planned a meeting. Every time you lied to my face. I shook my head. You thought this through more than anything else in our marriage. Her lips trembled. I hate myself for it. Good, I said without hesitation. You should. Her breath hitched, and for a second, I saw something shift in her eyes, realization, maybe, that this wasn't something she could just cry her way out of. That no matter how much she begged, I wasn't going to magically forget the months of betrayal. I moved past her, heading toward the door. She reached out, grabbing my wrist, her touch so familiar yet so foreign now. Where are you going? I pulled my arm free. Anywhere but here. Her face crumpled, but I didn't stay to watch her break down again. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I breathed. I didn't know what came next, but I knew it wouldn't include her. I drove without a destination, letting the roads lead me wherever they wanted. The silence in the car was deafening, but I couldn't bring myself to turn on the radio. Music reminded me too much of her. Our playlists, the songs we used to sing along to on road trips, the ones we danced to in the kitchen on lazy Sunday mornings. Even now, she was everywhere. In the smallest details, in the habits I didn't realize were ours until they no longer belonged to us. I ended up at a motel just outside the city. It was nothing special. Just a cheap place with a flickering neon sign and a front desk clerk who barely looked up as I checked in. The room was small, the bed stiff, the air stale. But it was mine. A space untouched by her, by the life I was walking away from. I sat on the edge of the bed, my bag still at my feet, and stared at the wall. This was real. It was over. For so long, Laura had been a constant in my life. I had built everything around the idea of us, of our future. And now there was just me, alone, starting over at 34, when I thought I had already figured out my forever. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, Laura and Mark, whispering, laughing, kissing. My mind tortured me with the details I would never truly know. The moments between them that had belonged to me before she gave them away. By morning, my anger hadn't faded. If anything, it burned hotter. I couldn't stop thinking about all the times she had looked me in the eyes and told me she loved me while sleeping with someone else. I needed to do something. Anything. Sitting in that motel room, drowning in my thoughts, wasn't going to fix this. So I called a lawyer. The moment I heard myself say the words, "I want to file for divorce," something inside me shifted. It wasn't just an idea anymore. It was a decision. A path forward. It didn't make the pain disappear, but it gave me something to hold on to. I sent Laura a message. I spoke to a lawyer. "I'll have the papers sent over soon." She called me almost instantly, but I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text. "Daniel, please, let's talk. Don't do this yet." Yet, like there was a chance I would change my mind. Like she hadn't made this choice for both of us the moment she let him into our lives. I turned off my phone. I wasn't sure how long it would take to rebuild myself from this, but I knew one thing for certain. I was never going back.